And welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us. 106 on this Friday afternoon. A quick check on your currents outside. Roughly 78 degrees already with a south wind gusting to 23 miles an hour. We'll have a full rundown on that forecast because there might be a little bumpy weather in the forecast for later today and into early tonight. I'm meteorologist Justin Storm alongside Ag Director Bridgette Readel. And Bridgette, I saw that you got some thunder and some rain last night. What was it like experiencing said thunder?
Well, I could hear it coming from a distance. I literally had windows open last night because it was like 74 degrees in the house at 10 o'clock. It was a nice day. And you know how it is. You don't have all the windows open at the right time. And I could hear the thunder coming from quite the distance. Saw a lot of videos from west of me where they were getting not only hail, but almost like a snow mix. It was piling up so heavily in some areas, like a vehicle parked on the field and it was stacking up on the windshield. Here, there was some heavy rainfall for a short amount of time. I'm sorry, I know that I should be much better about running out to check my WDAY Weather and Ag in Focus rain gauge that we have from Productive Alternatives in Fergus Falls, Minnesota. I haven't had a time to get away from my desk to go check yet, so I don't know how much I got.
That's all right, Bridgette. And as much as I love the Fergus Falls Productive Alternative rain gauges that we have, by the way,
yes,
they are amazing. They're great. We got to get you a digital one. We got to get you like a full-blown weather station. That way you can just have it sent to your phone.
I'd like that.
Although
because I can't apparently walk the, 30 feet out my door.
Well, that's way too far to walk. I would never expect you to do that.
Thank you. Thank you for understanding my plight.
Do you have it set up right next to the garden?
Actually, the rain gauge is out in the front of the house, but I think it's going to move out by the garden for the summer months. Put it on a pole out there and put it in a nice location to help be sort of a weather spotter, because I have a headline about that.
Really? You got a headline for me?
Well, I talked about this morning on our morning shows, and I've also had a couple of folks who have responded saying they'd be interested, and that is because you could become a community collaborative rain, hail, and snow network volunteer. And there is a group out of Colorado. They report back to the National Weather Service, but they're looking for folks, especially in rural areas, who can help. It's easy. They have third graders doing it all the way up to retired folks who are 100 years old. This is their daily response to weather such as wind, rain, snow, hail, and so much more. And so if you would like to become one of those Weather Network volunteers, so we can keep disproving the Hector Airport temperature wrong, you can email us agorweather@flagfamily.com and we will help out. Happy to do that.
Indeed. And if you want to be on the program today and ask some questions, whether they're weather or agriculture related, or maybe lawn and garden, because we have lawn and garden radio coming up here in a bit with Don Kinzler. We got Don in the corner. Don, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're able to join us today.
And things are green and things are blossoming. Trees are blooming. We've got some perennial flowers blooming, and I even got a little bit of garden in before this last rain.
See, I was thinking about getting mine in last week. I just didn't quite pull the trigger because I'm going to wait for the wind to come through tomorrow, and then I'm going to throw them in.
Notice I said we got some in. Some was 2 rows, and then I ran out of time, and then the rain started coming.
Yeah, so we're going to be having lawn and garden radio coming up here in a bit, and we could even start it early if you want. 701-293-9000 if you got any questions about the yard, the shrubs, the flowers, the gardens, your trees. I promise you cannot stump Don, but you sure can try. I don't think I've ever heard you not have an answer, Don.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm not that difficult. Just ask me about how to grow a palm tree in Florida. I'm fresh out of advice, so I'm not that hard to stump.
You know, I feel like I should ask him, but then I also feel like he has an answer in the back corner on how to grow them. Well, I know I got all sorts of questions about my yard and our garden. I got some perennial, they're kind of, I guess you could technically call them perennials, to ask you about coming up here in a bit. But if you want to get queued up for that, feel free to join us, 701-293-9000. You can email us your questions at weather or ag@flagfamily.com. And Bridgette, with that storm that came through last night, that was actually a part of our first severe thunderstorm of the year. That was a storm. I think it was Barnes and Steele County is where it got initially warned.
That originated.
And it was over. I'm just pulling up my map here. I'm getting a little lost. Just south of Cooperstown and north of Hannaford. And then it moved over and kind of parked directly over Laverne, where it was just dumping hail. I'm not quite sure the exact size of it, but it was somewhere between probably 1 inch and a dime or maybe a nickel. So, I mean, it was some decent-sized hail associated with it. Some pretty good downpours and some rain, and that eventually moved over towards Pillsbury and up towards Page. And then by the time it got to, Erie, Hunter, and Arthur, the thing had kind of fizzled out. It was just a general weak thunderstorm or maybe a strong thunder shower, however you'd want to categorize it. But it was our first severe thunderstorm warning, and may we see our second and third this evening. Tonight. It is a very good possibility.
Heating up out there.
Yes, it is heating up there very nicely. We're at 78 degrees. The dew point's approaching 60. And that will help fuel some storms that will likely develop later today. We're going to see the sunshine continuing, a few clouds around as temperatures reach into the mid and a few upper 80s, and the wind will be a little breezy out of the southwest, about 10 to 20, gusting to 25 miles an hour. Now, out west, we're going to be watching a cold front that will be crossing across the state. This is going to develop some storms along it throughout this afternoon in western and west central North Dakota, and then that line will eventually get a little larger and start to race towards the valley as we head into this evening and into the overnight hours. Now, there is a level 2 risk for severe weather, so we're talking about the potential for some scattered severe thunderstorms across North Dakota and into the valley. With the main concern just being damaging wind gusts, upwards of 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts with some of the strongest storms that are likely to develop later today. And we could see that coming in as early as, I'd want to say, 7 o'clock, and that would be more towards the northern valley, and then we would get in on it down here another hour or two after that. So I would say keep an eye if you're within the valley. About 6 o'clock onward, I think the main window will be between 7 and 11 o'clock, but we'll still see some showers and storms lasting throughout tonight, and I suppose it may be possible to still get a strong storm after midnight. So this is something we'll keep an eye on throughout tonight. Not going to be the worst of situations, but, a few strong storms are expected in the area. Behind that cold front, it's going to turn windy for tomorrow. We'll see all this exiting the area by tomorrow morning. Saturday's looking nice. It's just going to be windy. There will likely be a couple of spotty showers here or there, but as a whole, the day looks dry, sunny to partly cloudy, highs near 70 degrees, but west winds 20 to 40 miles an hour. And we'll see that wind lightening up for Sunday. We'll introduce some scattered showers. For the most part, temperatures on Sunday are in the 60s to lower 70s, so not a terrible weekend, just a little windy on Saturday, a few scattered showers to dodge on Sunday. Not everyone's going to see the rain. It may rain a couple times in some locations. So, Bridgette, not too bad of a weekend in store for us. Just a few showers to dodge here and there.
I might get some garden work done. And that's a big topic of conversation I want to have with Don today. Yes, we invite Don on for all our listeners, but realistically, it's just Justin and I taking care of our yards and garden. That's why we invite him. It's pretty much all about us.
Well, I want to know, is it going to rain over my yard in South Fargo so I know whether we can make it about me too. I want to know, is it going to rain over my yard so I can spread lawn fertilizer?
Yes, this would be a good afternoon or evening to do that. There's a very good shot that it's going to rain in your backyard. And
super.
Most everyone's yard, in fact, at some point throughout this evening by tomorrow morning. So I think that's going to be a good bet. And again, if you want to get queued up to ask Don or us some questions for Lawn and Garden Radio, you're usually on Jay's show every Wednesday, aren't you?
Wednesday afternoons. And thanks for inviting me. I mentioned lawn fertilizer, and don't feel bad if you didn't get your lawn fertilized yet, because actually, as we approach Memorial Day, is the prime time that the turf researchers have said is the most beneficial time in spring to fertilize your lawn. So I'm going to get that on before the rain that you indicate. And that fertilizer is so important on lawns. It helps the roots to grow deeply so it can pump water from below. Then you don't have to water quite as much. And it just responds better, outcompetes weeds better. So, fertilizer for lawns.
Hey, right on. Bridgette?
I feel like I struck gold this week, Don. I found
I'm curious. What have you
farmer
got?
who had... Well, he had an excessive amount of buckets. They were actually buckets that had had sugar beet seed in them. So that seed was actually treated with an insecticide for planting and a seed treatment. So what I've needed to do is make sure I wear my gloves, my long sleeve shirt, etc. Wash those buckets out to make sure that they're clean. I'll be cutting the bottom off of them tomorrow with a Sawzall and using them as wind protection around my tomatoes and peppers because I think Justin's about to tell me the wind is going to be that bad. So I feel like I'm winning the gardening war when I have probably a new 2022 5-gallon buckets to my name. Look at me
Oh
go.
man,
Look at
awesome!
you.
And when coffee cans used to be metal, metal kind of 3-pound coffee cans, those used to be just ideal for putting around a little tomato plant. For at least I don't know
Yes.
a week or so until it gets
Right.
accustomed to the wind. But man, I like your bucket idea because those tomatoes. If the wind whips them back and forth, there is one thing that you can do if you don't have as many buckets as you do, Bridget, and if you don't have
Mm-hmm.
the 3-pound coffee cans that I've saved over the years, there is one thing that you can do. And even if you protect them, this still is a good idea, and that's to plant the tomatoes deeply. In
Yes.
fact, maybe even take off that lowest set of leaves and plant them nice and deep because that does a couple of things. It prevents the wind from whipping them. It's bad. There's not as much stem up above ground. But also, tomatoes are very unique in that they will root from along that buried stem. And so you plant them down deeply and less wind whipping. And also, you'll get a better root system because they'll root from all along that stem. Other vegetables, we don't plant them that deeply.
Don, you are segueing into answering so many great questions. I have an email here from one of our listeners, Peter. He wants to talk about the basics of starting a garden for the first time because there's someone who's new to gardening. I think between the three of us, we have a lot of ways that we can help. We'll be able to do that after we talk with the American Ag Network. We'll do that right now. And while we're listening to the Ag Network, make sure that you go to our website, click on the hot links button, nominate your favorite veteran for Steve Carney's fishing getaway. That's going to be drawn next Friday on Bonnie and Friends. So, Ag Network, nominate a fisherman veteran buddy, and be right back with Don Kinzler. I just thought I'd give you the wind sound effects. I'm here to help.
And welcome back to the program. Thanks for rejoining us. 122. We're starting up Lawn and Garden Radio. 701-293-9000 if you got a question for Don Kinzler. And best of luck asking him something that he won't be able to give you a straightforward answer on, whether or not it's
not that hard.
Just don't ask him about tropical palm trees. I guess that's his kryptonite. But hey, you got a tree that looks weird. You got something that looks disease-ridden. Maybe something's not coming back the way you want it to. Can I fertilize my yard? How short should I cut my grass? Is it okay to do a garden? Feel free to ask us.
One thing I'm really happy about this spring, okay, it was a weird winter.
It was,
and we can be we can be in problems if we do not get insulating snow for many of our things. Lawn grass can freeze out, trees, shrubs, perennial flowers can have problems. And so we were all holding our breath, but things seem to have generally come through fine. Even though it was a weird winter, it was a beautiful winter, but we don't know how plants respond to weird winters, and so far, knock on wood, things look like they're coming normally.
I was going to say, when you get a winter like that, obviously you would assume when you don't have a snowpack as insulation, you would drop the subsoil temperatures a lot if it gets cold enough, because there's not that blanket to keep the ground warm, so your frost is going to punch deeper. But thankfully, it was warm.
You got it.
We didn't really have the frost potential.
You got it. If we had just extended extreme cold, we could have been in big problems. The only thing I noticed in our own perennial garden, our iris that we planted newly last fall heaved. And I like the blank stare sometimes.
Heaved.
That's because of the freezing thawing of the soil. And iris aren't that deep rooted, so they can literally be lifted out of the soil, heaved out of the soil because of the freezing and thawing. So I love the blank look when I get that when I say our perennial iris heaved.
That's really
I knew what that was. For the record, I got that one. So
I love old gardening language.
I got a listener question for you, Don, here. This is someone who's starting a garden for the first time, and they want to know what the basics are. They want some help growing tomatoes, onions, carrots, and sweet corn. They got a lot of land to choose from. So is there a location that they should choose that would fit best for a garden, whether or not it was a flat area or a sloped area? Something north and south facing or east to west facing? What kind of advice could you give someone just getting into gardening?
The number one is full sun. It sounds like they got plenty of space, so full sun is absolutely a must for most vegetables. So put it in full sun. And it sounds like they're going to get rid of the grass. If there is grass there, they're going to get rid of that, either strip it off or chemically remove that grass, and then work it up really good. Okay, the question is, a slope or low-lying area. The main thing is choose an area where water does not stand after good heavy downpour, because vegetables can easily just drown out. So if it's a little bit of slope, that's good. A little bit of even a south-facing slope, that warms up really, really nice. So to establish your garden spot for years to come, south-facing slope is good. Let's see. It's always debated. Do you plant your rows north to south or east to west? I've done both.
Really?
Yeah, I've done both and had good luck both. So, sometimes if you're doing a rectangle, do you do it lengthwise? Well, you follow me. But it's gardens seem to grow both. Good both ways. Starting a new garden, depending on what your soil type is a wonderful time to incorporate organic matter in. Organic matter is kind of the cure-all. And when I say organic matter, peat moss, compost, well-rotted manure that's chemical-free and herbicide-free. And incorporate that in. It helps sandy soil to retain moisture, and it helps our heavy clay soil to be a little more mellow. So it's a good time to put 1 inch, 2 inches across the entire and rototill that in. And so those are basically the kind of the introductory things. And of course, to rototill, get it rototilled, if you can, 6-8 inches deep would be nice if you have a tiller that'll go that deep. Mine will go up to about 6 inches, I believe. And then from there, it sounds like you've listed the materials that you want to plant. Locate the sweet corn so that it's on the usually kind of on the north side so that it's not shading out. You know, you don't plant the sweet corn and then put like squash behind it because the squash would get
Right.
shaded out, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so you can finagle it a little bit. Make sure, it sounds like you've got good space, so space things on the seed pack. It will tell how far apart, and use a good spacing. Oftentimes we squeeze things too close together. For example, it's easy to undermine, is that a word? Underestimate
Yeah,
how far squash or pumpkins will run.
I did that last year with tomatoes. I
Yeah,
think I went, I think it was 3 feet between the plants. I'm like, oh, it's plenty of room. Look at how much
No.
room is there. And it was like 2 months later, and it was a 6-foot wall that I couldn't even get in to pick anything.
Well, they look so tiny and cute when they're
Yeah.
tiny and cute. And pretty soon, they're a massive thing that you can't even walk in between. So with plenty of space, kind of make sure you give them enough space and follow the directions on the planting, and you should be good to go. Anything else, Bridgette, that you thought of that we're not covering
So
on
there's
that? I love new gardening.
Couple things. Yeah, I do too. And I'm a longtime gardener, but yet you learn something new every year. And carrot seed being so small, I learned just 2 years ago when I was having trouble getting my carrot seed starting because it kept blowing out with the wind we had, that what I would do is plant my carrot seed. We actually make furrows, so it does look like a U-shaped trough, if you will. And at the bottom of that furrow, I would put my carrot seed very lightly, put soil over the top, water it so it was moist. Then I put a board, like a thin board over the top of that furrow that prevented the wind from blowing it, kept it damp underneath there. And then once those little carrot, they're such tiny little like fingerling stalks that start to come up. Once they started to come out of the ground, then I could take the board off and expose them to sunlight.
Well,
Have you heard of that, Don?
Oh, I sure have, because carrots is one of the trickiest vegetable seeds to get to germinate
Really?
and grow, because the seed is
Yep.
so tiny, and the tinier the vegetable seed, the shallower they get planted. You know, like beans, peas, you can plant them inch deep or so down in, but carrot seed, it just gets barely covered, meaning it's hard to keep it moist enough. So the wind can blow, and if it's not moist enough, they aren't going to germinate, or they do start to germinate, then they fry off. And so it's really, really hard to keep that moist enough. So the board method was used by old timers. I mean, I'm not calling you an old timer, Bridgette. But,
Oh, you can. It's okay. I'll take that.
but yeah, that's the old timers used to say, put a board plank over the area, plant the seed, moisten it down, put that plank on, check it every day. As soon as you see a little green, take that plank off. Others have adjusted that a little, maybe raise the plank up a little so it shades it, but yet they don't squish
Yes.
the little seedlings. That can be done. My mom used to use peat moss. She would plant the carrot seed, moisten it down, moisten some peat moss, put that on top. Of course, that peat moss can't be allowed to dry or that'll just blow off too. So yeah, the idea is to try to keep that row of carrots moist and protected through the germination period, and then remove whatever covering you've got. And yeah, that, it sounds like, oh, carrots should be easy, but no, that's one of the trickiest things to get to germinate in a vegetable garden.
Very interesting. 701-293-9000 is the program number to call in if you want to ask Don some questions. Email weatherorag@flagfamily.com. I had one that came in. She couldn't stay on the line, but Jenny was wondering about her petunias, if deadheading is really an effective method to keep them flowering or to get more flowers, or if it really doesn't pose much of a benefit for the plant.
It makes a big, big difference. In fact, when you buy a petunia plant to put in either a flower bed or a planter, one of the best things you can do, I know it's going to kill, I know this is going to sound really cruel, but one of the best things you can do is cut back some of those flowers, because an annual, like a petunia, an annual's mission in life is to flower, produce seed, and then die, because it'll know it's reproduced and its mission in life is over. So if we can prevent the formation of seed on annual flowers like petunias, it'll keep blooming, it'll keep trying. And so if when you buy a little petunia plant, if it's already blossoming and maybe even starting to set a little seed, it can shorten the lifespan of that. And if you cut them back, I learned this from my mom, grandma, and I thought it was cruel, but they showed me it works well. So trim them back when you plant them. yeah, you lose those first few blossoms, but it'll bush out, branch out, and in the long run, you'll get a much better plant. And so, yes, deadheading, that's kind of an old gardening term for removing not just the little faded blossoms, but you have to get right behind that, which is the green developing little seed pod, and remove that, pinch that off as well. But yeah, it makes a big difference. Marigolds also, when the blossom fades, you pinch off that developing seed head, and it does cause the plants to keep blooming. Now, one thing is neat. Plant breeders have been prolific, and there are some of the newer petunia varieties that don't set seed as readily, and so they call them self-cleaning, self-deadheading, and so some of the new varieties are even better for our containers.
Very interesting.
Nice.
Wasn't aware. Thanks for the question, Jenny. We got to take a quick moment here, get caught up with bottom of the hour news. I got a couple of lines open, 701-293-9000. Again, studio line 701-293-9000, or emails weather or ag at flagfamily.com. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Lawn and Garden Radio.
And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. We are so fortunate to have Don Kinzler of NDSU with us. We're answering basically the lawn and garden questions that Justin and I have. The rest of you can call in if you'd like on the Red Wing shoe line at 701-293-9000. One of our other projects is Here We Grow, where Justin, myself, and Dean, we're custom farming 20 acres of corn north of Glendon, Minnesota, in conjunction with Trygve Skolnes, Parker Skolnes, and Justin Magnuson. And we have some sponsors who are helping us do that. One of them is Foltz Buildings. Foltz has been a brand name out of Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. Why choose them? Well, they have vision, expertise, and they will build exceptionally well. And also Pivot Bio. They are also putting product on the field to see what we can do to increase our yield for corn, because Justin wants the record-winning corn yield in Minnesota this year. That's his goal. He's after.
I'll try for it at least. We'll see what happens.
Do you have your number documented so we don't lose track of your yield goal?
225?
225 it is. We're looking for you.
Can get it.
Okay, we'll have that down. So we've been talking all sorts of beginning steps to starting a garden. We had a listener question regarding that. And we'll get to answering more of those because I do have some comments about onions. But first of all, we have Brad on line 1. Justin, can you bring Brad in to ask his question?
Yeah. Hi there, Brad. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Hey, we're doing great. You got a question for Don or us?
I do. So I moved into a house and it had like a 10 by 10 garden. Do I just plant in that this year, or should I throw some kind of fertilizer in with that? I was going to put something in there, but what should I do? They already had the garden there.
Yeah, well, good. That's great. If an area has already been gardened, good. You're kind of one step ahead of having to take up soil or grass or sod. But now this would be a good time to do actually a soil test. You can just do an online search for NDSU soil test, and it'll come up how to take it and where to take it. If you're in Minnesota, University of Minnesota has similar soil testing. And because I kind of like the analogy of if you just add fertilizer to a vegetable garden, it's kind of like adding salt to soup without first testing it. So it is kind of important because in some areas our phosphorus, potassium could be kind of high, and just by adding a well-balanced fertilizer, you might be adding too much of those. And so if the garden has been there last year, you're probably going to get a good garden, a good passable, good yields by not fertilizing. But if you do your soil test, that'll kind of tell you if you need to tweak. If it needs more nitrogen, you might get even better production out of it. So I wouldn't want to recommend putting a 10-10-10 if you're already too high in a couple of those nutrients. So
sure, yeah, I'm just down in the Lakes Country area, Detroit Lakes area.
Sure. And so University of Minnesota would be great, or bring it on up to NDSU. You can either mail it or drop in a soil test. That's always a good place to start. And, and like I say, during the first season, if you don't have time to get that soil test in, it's maybe safer just to plant the garden and see how things are growing.
Kind of where I was at, but I didn't know if I should add some manure or something to it, but like you're saying, soil testing is a great idea.
Yeah, one thing, if it looks like the soil is in your area, if it's kind of sandy or something like that, you're never wrong to add organic matter. Well composted manure, other compost, peat moss. You can't hardly go wrong by doing that to improve the texture anyway. Especially if it tends to be a little sandy and you are concerned that it'll have enough moisture holding.
Well, it is kind of like a raised garden. I don't know. They had it in the yard and they raised it, and they must have added the compost from outside of town or something to it.
Sure,
it looks good to me.
Yeah,
I just didn't know if I should do something about it for the first year that I'm there, or just see what happens.
Sure. Raised garden gives people an opportunity to kind of improve the soil. You can get carrots that are actually 12 inches deep because you've kind of improved and amended the soil versus, something that's too heavy. And so raised gardens oftentimes gets very, very good production. But I would still do the soil test. And so in the meantime, I would probably plant, see how everything does, and while you're waiting for a soil test, because you can always fertilize after, so you don't need to fertilize always before you plant, but this would give you time to get the soil test, and then you can fertilize afterwards with either granular type or water-soluble Miracle Grow type also as plants are growing.
Appreciate the phone call, Brad. Thanks for calling. We had another email question coming in. They wanted to know if it's okay to trim back or prune their spireas, or if they should wait longer, or if it's a fall thing.
Spireas bloom on what's called new wood. That's branches that are produced this growing season, branches that start growing in the spring, and then they'll produce flowers, versus shrubs that produce on old wood. That's like lilacs. Okay. So spirea can be pruned now if you need to shape them up a little bit. If they had some of last year's flowers kind of clinging on there, you can trim them, shape them up a little bit, and they'll bloom on most varieties, spirea, will bloom on the current new wood that is produced.
Awesome. Bridgette, you got a few over there?
I do have some things. So one of them that I have been given is when it comes to lilacs, and we're in the midst of the bloom, and people you're in two camps. You're either horrified because of your hay fever or thrilled because you're a lilac lover. And so for those of us who are cutting them and dragging armloads of blooms into our homes, is there a way to extend the life of those fresh flowers? I personally get the fresh flower packets from floral shops to add to it, but is there something different we could do, Don?
Good
Any
question.
ideas?
Well, there you just answered the question. The floral
okay.
No, but I got something else to add. The floral packets from a flower shop, and if you go to the flower counter at even a grocery store or a florist, they'll have those little packets that they can sell to you, and those keep the water fresher, so that bacteria don't clog the bottom of the stem of the lilacs or other flowers. And they also produce or provide a little bit of sap-type material to those lilacs. So, yes, perfect idea. The other thing, too, that will greatly help lilacs is cut them in the morning. Because they've had all night to have the sap up into the blossoms. They'll be nice and fresh and more turgid versus cutting them in the middle of the day. The sun kind of lessens some of the sap that is in there internally. So cut the lilacs first thing in the morning and bring them on in. Put them in water immediately. So that you don't get air in the bottom of the stem. And I'm in the camp that loves lilacs. In fact, the yard that we were in did not have lilacs. So about 4 years ago, we planted lilacs. And we have blooming lilacs now. Takes a few years, but fourth year now they're blooming.
Very interesting.
I love them. And
I do too.
I realize anybody around me who suffers from hay fever must be horrified, but I think I brought at least 4 vases of them in yesterday. So
and isn't fun too when you see either home yards or even a shelter belt, all the diversity in lilacs. There's white ones, there's light purple, light lavender, dark, almost rose colored, and isn't that fun? And some of the hybrids, which are sold at garden centers, some of the hybrids don't produce the suckers. The old-fashioned lilac, of course, you get all the sprouts. We planted the old-fashioned lilac because I kind of want them to fill in, so that's good too. So you have choices with lilacs. There's also dwarf types. There's even a lilac called bloomerang sold at garden centers. It blooms again later in the summer.
Oh, it'll bloom twice.
Blooms twice.
Wow.
Most years.
I'll be signing up for that.
That's
cool. Most years.
Wait.
Yeah, not every year. Kind of depends on the summer conditions. Bloomerang, it's called.
Might have to look for some of those.
Justin, unless you have a question, I've got one more for Don.
Go ahead, Bridgette.
And this regards the zone maps and changes that were made over the winter. I think they were done by USDA, kind of moving upward some of that zone mapping. Don, did that change a lot of what we do up here, or not necessarily? Are there some maybe shopping tips as you head on out to the greenhouse this year?
Yeah, when the hardiness zone map was updated, it moved us a little bit warmer. And of course, that hardiness zone map is based on the coldest winter temperature that areas get. And so that pertains to trees, shrubs, perennial flowers that have to overwinter. And so we got a little bit warmer. It hasn't dramatically changed. We still can't plant the palm trees for Florida that I don't know how to grow. And I don't know how to grow those anyway. And so anyway, it's moved us up a little bit warmer. It's not changing dramatically yet what we can do, but it is a signal that we've gotten, so most of North Dakota, Minnesota are moved into Zone 4. There's still a little bit across the tier of North Dakota, Minnesota that is still Zone 3. Zone 1 is the coldest, way up by the Arctic Circle. So it's 1, 2, 3. So anything that you look for a tag that's Zone 3, 2, 1 is rock solid winter hardy. And Zone 4 is a big zone, so we can plant most everything in Zone 4 when you look at the tag. But some things you do need to still investigate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the trend is we're warming up, getting maybe a little more mild, a little less severe in the winter, which is a good sign for our trees and shrubs.
It sure is. And I got one more here for you on lawns. How often should you mow your yard, and is there an ideal height that is recommended for the grass?
There sure is. Now, the mowing height that you set is one of the simplest things you can do to improve the health of your lawn. 3-inch, maybe even 3.5 inch, because there's been a direct correlation between the height of the grass. I mean, you don't want to go 12 inches.
Right.
Direct correlation between the recommended height of grass, 3 inches, and a deep root system. If you mow scalping, what's the term? Low mowing. If you mow too low,
fairway.
Yeah, if you mow too low, then that also makes the root system more shallow, and the shallow root system can't get down into the subsoil as well for moisture. So healthier lawn, 3-inch.
Awesome. How deep does grass get, the root structure? I guess I've always kind of been curious at that. You don't think of grass really going too far deep, but if you're mowing consistently at a 3-inch height, how deep are those roots going to tap into moisture down there?
That I've seen charts on that. And if you were mowing only about 2 inches, okay, now I'm going to have to probably look this up, but according to if I'm bringing this chart up just in my head, 2-inch mowing height, which is kind of shallow, you're probably getting maybe 4 inches of roots, which isn't very deep. Mm-hmm. And if you're mowing 3 inches, you're probably getting a foot.
Oh wow!
But again, don't hold me to that. But I'm just pulling that way back from the far reaches of my head. There's data on that.
Oh, very interesting. Well, Don, really appreciate you coming on here and sharing a little bit and answering some of our questions and our listener questions. Looks like I'm getting a phone call here real quick, so I'll try and sneak it in here. Hi there, caller. What's your name?
My name is Bill.
Bill, do you got a question
Hi,
for
Bill.
Don or us?
A new home construction, you put the home in, and you haul dirt in, put the home in, and then you're sitting there waiting. Well, what do you prefer? Do you prefer to plant grass, or do you prefer sod? If money was no object, which would you do, and which do you think is a better fit? And I'll hang up and listen.
Yep.
Thanks for the call.
Hands down, I would seed. Hands down, I would
Really?
seed. It's tempting to put down sod because it's instant green.
Right.
The kids have something to play on as soon as it roots in, of course. But in our first home, we sodded around the home and seeded the rest. And 3 years later, what we seeded was much nicer. The seeded grass roots into the native soil, goes down, develops a good deep root system. Sod tends a little more to stay on the surface. The roots don't seem to penetrate quite as deeply, and it requires a little more water. And so in the long run, a seeded lawn, I feel, is much better after having experienced both. Now, there's lots of sodded lawns, and so as long as they're maintained well, they can be just beautiful. But if I had my preference, I would definitely seed.
Wow.
But if you want or need instant, then sod is definitely the way to go.
Awesome. Don, if someone wants to get more information on this, I don't know if you do like a newsletter or if you would recommend anywhere or a location for someone to go to maybe get in contact with you.
Well, you can certainly send me an email, donald.kinzler, Kinzler, at ndsu.edu. But you can also check the NDSU Lawns and Gardens Facebook page. If you just search that, NDSU Lawns and Gardens, there's good stuff there too.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it, Don. Thanks very much for coming in here.
Oh, it's been great to be here.
Look forward to having you on here again.
Always fun talking yards, gardens, lawns, especially on a beautiful day like today.
Right. And we all got to get those gardens. Hey, is it too early to put a garden in?
No, my preferred 10-day period is between 15th and 25th of May. It doesn't bother me if I get closer towards the 25th of May. Things sprout quickly. So my preferred year in, year out 10-day is the 15th to 25th of May.
Awesome.
If it's Memorial Day, that's okay too.
Perfect. Well, we'll take a quick moment here. We'll come back at an ag topic. Got a check on the forecast and any last questions you may have. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the program. Thanks for rejoining us. 1:56.5 on this Friday afternoon. Got a couple minutes left in the show. Yeah, I pointed out the seconds.
The half, I like that.
The half.
I had a listener tell me that when we say bottom of the hour, he thought that was wrong. It should be the closer to 12 o'clock because that should be the bottom of the hour. So
Yeah,
fair interpretation.
fair interpretation. I think bottom of a clock is 6, but
Yeah.
interesting. I didn't think about it that way.
I'll talk it over with my second grade teacher who taught me how to use a clock.
Wrong. I suppose we're gonna do a quick rundown on the forecast here since we only got about a minute and a half. Main story is storms coming in later this evening and into the overnight hours here in the valley. This will start in western North Dakota and even areas of eastern Montana throughout this afternoon. Storms will be developing along a cold front that will be tracking through the central portion of the state and into the valley throughout this evening and into tonight. Main window for us here in Fargo and up into the Northern Valley would be about 7 to 11 o'clock this evening into tonight, although the Northern Valley would likely start to experience that a little sooner than us down here in the Southern Valley. We'll give it a little leeway and just say we'll just say about 7 o'clock, maybe after 6 o'clock, start looking for some storms out west pushing into the valley in spots. So main concern with these storms, damaging wind gusts to 70 miles per hour with some of the stronger storms that develop along that cold front. The weekend, not too bad. Saturday is pretty dry, and I say pretty dry because there's likely going to be a couple of pop-up showers here or there. Most of them, and even that not widespread, would be north of Highway 2, right around 72 degrees for a high tomorrow, upper 60s to low 70s around the area. Sunday looks a little more wet, but it's not a rain out. Not everywhere is going to see the rain. We'll just have some scattered showers with highs again in the 60s to lower 70s, and that, I think, will wrap it up for us today. Bridgette, we'll have to try and get Don on here again, maybe do this a regular thing or a bi-weekly thing.
Already emailed him.
Awesome. Well, some guy named Justin's here. He says he's doing the next show, so we'll see what he's got. Stay tuned.